Welcome to the next video. After we talked about the PEP 8 guidelines, it's now time to show you the Linter tools that we can use for Python code. And there are several Linter tools available to use. And at first, I want to show you the tool that is called Pylint. Pylint is an open source project organized by the Python Code Quality Authority, or in short, PyCQA. And you can see the source code on GitHub, github.com/pycqa/Pylint. And we already installed Pylint with the requirements.txt file. But if you want to update Pylint, for example, you can just run the pip install command. So pip install Pylint, or if you want to upgrade it, pip install Pylint -- upgrade. So what is Pylint exactly is now the question. Pylint is a tool that scans your code about potential issues or errors that might occur. Also, Pylint does some kind of checks about the PEP 8 Python style. So we could just run Pylint for now. I have created a test_pylint.py file here in the PEP 8 folder. And here we have a 2D vector class that we will use in the following videos also, where we just have a short implementation of a 2D vector class, which can store a x and y value of a 2D vector. So if you do not know what a vector is, it's just a 2D point in this example here. So I do not want to go into the mathematical details because we do not want to implement a vector class here. So it is just the starting point where we can run a Pylint linter, for example. So I just want to show you how you can run Pylint and what kind of errors or warnings Pylint will show us. So at first, you have to activate the virtual environment where you have installed Pylint. So in my case, it's the PyUdemy environment. And if we want to run Pylint only on the test_pylint.py file, we can just change in the terminal into the directory where the Python file lies. So I'm currently in chapter 2 coding guidelines /pep8. And here the test_pylint file is. So now we can just run Pylint whitespace test_pylint.py. And if I now press enter, Pylint will scan my code. And Pylint is a static analysis tool, so it just looks at the source code file here. It does not run the Python file under the hood, it just scans the file itself. And now we get several lines output here in the terminal from Pylint, and we can see what Pylint will complain about. So at first we will see the file name, then the line, and the column where the warning or the recommendation or the error occurs. So at first we see here we have the, just call it for now, warning with the code CO303. And the warning CO303 has the identifier name trailing white space. And if we can go to line 7 in the file, I just see here, I forgot, or I added some white spaces that I do not need. So Pylint would also complain about white spaces that are unnecessary. As we can see here in line 7, these two white spaces are not needed, so we can remove them. And you might think now, okay, white spaces, okay, it's not very good to have unnecessary white spaces, but is it really a problem for my Python code? No, it is not. So Pylint has different categories of warnings, so to say, and one category would be C, that is coding conventions. Furthermore, we have in line 46 another trailing white space, which we could just remove. So we have another unnecessary white spaces here. So, okay. Then in line 79, the file misses a final new line. So a lot of tools, and not only in Python, but in a lot of other programming languages, expect that every file should end with a new line. So I just added it here. And if I run Pylint again, the first 3 warnings should disappear. Yes. And we can see here, Pylint will also rate our code. And currently we have a rating of 8.81 out of 10 points. And here in the parentheses, we see what the previous rate was. It was 8.31. So we improved by 0.51 points on this 0 to 10 scale. So we improved our code quality, so to say. Okay, next we can go to line 35, for example, where we have the dunder equal method, where I want to check if 2 vectors are equal. And to make it easy, 2 vectors are equal if the x values and the y values are the same. So if the x and y values are also equal. And here we see Pylint says recommendation. So the R stands for recommendation. Unnecessary else after return, in parentheses, no else return. So the text in the parentheses is the verbalized form of this recommendation code. So R1705 is the code of the warning itself, and every warning has a name, and the name is here in the parentheses. So the name is no else return. And what Pylint complains about is, if we are in the if case, we are returning true, so we will not reach any line below line 36. So this else return false here is not necessary. So we can just say return false here. So we can drop the else case. If we run Pylint again, the warnings also disappeared, and we have kind of the same warnings in line 41, where we could remove the else. In line 64, let me check. Okay, 64 is maybe a bit more interesting, because here we have an unnecessary elif. So what Pylint is thinking about is we can remove the elif case and just leave it as an if statement itself, because if we go into this here, we will return, and we will never reach the underlying lines here. If we go into this case, I will return, and I will never go into this else case. So the if, elif, and else block is not needed, and we can just do 2 separate if statements, and also the else statement here is not needed, because if we do not go in one of these 2 if statements, I want to raise the type error anyway, so we can remove the else case also. So if we run Pylint again, these warnings are also removed. And here, for example, we have another type of warning. So we had the warnings with the code C, which is just coding style. We had the warnings with the code R, which is recommendation. And we have the warnings with the code W, which stands for warnings. So warnings are a bit more important to fix, so to say, because warnings could lead to possible issues in your code. Recommendations and code refactoring remarks of Pylints won't result in any problems of your code. And there would be another category of Pylint warnings, which would be E for errors. And these errors would really result in an error so that your Python code won't run correctly. Okay, we can go now in line 59, where we see warning 0003, catching to general exception in parentheses broad except. So Pylint just says to us, okay, you shouldn't accept with the exception base class. You should be as precise as possible. So you should add the exact exception type that could occur here. Because this exception class is the base class of all other exceptions in the standard library. And this is just not very specific to our code. So we should drop this standard exception base class and use a bit more precise exception. So in this case, it was just an example to show that Pylint will also check your exceptions. I can just remove it here. If I just rerun the code, we have just one resulting error in line 69. Let me check. We have an unnecessary else after return again. So if we would go into this if statement here and return a new vector2D instance, we do not need this else case here. We can just add the raise value error here. And also, if we do not go into this if case here, we can remove the else case and raise the type error anyway. So now we should have a Pylint code rating out of 10 out of 10, which indicates that at least Pylint do not see any issues in our code. That does not mean that there are no issues in our code. It just means that Pylint do not see any issues. Pylint is not a alien technology which would find every issue in the code, but it's a pretty good tool to see how good is your code. Okay, that's enough for the moment for Pylint, and we will see us in the next video. Bye bye.